Hey guys, welcome. This is Brad Krantz. Thanks for joining me on my Monday morning leadership today. Hey, my leadership perspective today is going to be kind of a quickie overview of the latest book by David Rubenstein, How to Lead. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to share some thoughts from him. And he actually lays out 13 characteristics in the introduction that I find are very, very informative because he interviewed over 30 people to write this book. And that's kind of a compilation of the characteristics that they all had in common. So I thought this was a really interesting read. I'll give you kind of a little bit of the backstory on how I came across this. I was tuned into Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast earlier in the month, and he had on David Rubenstein. Now, the name vaguely rang a bell, but I'd say he was not a household name to me or easily recognizable. But just to give you a little bit of backstory on him, for the past 5 years, he says, David Rubenstein, he's author of The American Story. He's a co-founder of the Carlyle Group, the host of the David Rubenstein Show, and he's another other things. He's on the board of directors of the John F. Kennedy Performing Arts Center, et cetera. But what he did over the last 5 years, he spoke with the world's highest performing leaders about who they are and how they became successful. So How to Lead shares the extraordinary stories of these people. And I wanted to just share some of this. The book's great. I mean, again, I'm going to really highly commend this book because of the perspectives, et cetera, but it's just kind of fascinating. But he starts off with, he says he's always been fascinated with leadership. And that's kind of my fascination. That's my passion. But specifically, what individual leaders can accomplish by the power of their intellect, the level of their unique skill, force of their personality, or effectiveness of their ability to persuade. You know, and he asks the question, why would anyone really want to become a leader? So he took a compilation of the 30 people that he interviewed over 5 years and wrote this book. Now, interestingly, he talks about, I think, the attributes. I did a whole series off of John Maxwell's, the 21 irrefutable law characteristics of leadership. And this is kind of a revised version, but he says, so what were the attributes that enabled me to go from something of a non-leader in my first phase of life? He talks about 3 phases of life, to a leader in the second and third. I think he's in his early to mid 70s right now, because I would cite the same ones that I repeatedly hear from those I interview on my show. And so here's the 13 characteristics. I'm not going to go into depth, but I wanted to talk about them because I think the characteristics that make up leadership and leaders is fascinating. And there's tends to be common threads through most of the lists too. But number 1, he says, is luck. And I found that interesting. So there's no doubt that successful leaders seem to have luck along the way. And we can probably think of someone. I found myself very lucky in the position I'm at with the people that I'm working with, a 3LE team, and developing an online business platform. But luck plays, we're talking not Las Vegas luck or lottery luck, but I think, you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get, but also it's a combination of luck of being in the right place at the right time with the right people. But he talks about how he got to be part of the Carter White House was just by a chance encounter. So sometimes it's a really thin thread that can take us there, but luck. Number 2 is desire to succeed. And this is, you know, you have to have that desire, that passion in you. A leader also has to possess a desire, he says, to succeed, to achieve something of note, to make a mark in the world, to create a product or service of real interest and value to others, right? So you have to have a passion, a desire, motivation to drive you. Thirdly was pursuit of something new and unique. A leader is typically a person who desires to build or create something. In this case, with what I'm doing with my business partners, 3LE, Adam and Ashley Rieger, is basically building and scaling an online platform to build a business that's unique in the network marketing industry. But pursuit of something new and unique, very, very applicable there. I found that interesting. 4, hard work and long hours, right? Hard work leads to success, right? There's no shortcut to become a leader. So it's not something that just happens by accident. It takes performing in a job, he said, and being a real leader of note, that the job takes many hours of hard work, right? It's impossible to develop the requisite skills for this 5 days a week, 9 to 5, right? So if you're a 9 to 5er, it's probably not going to happen for you. It's going the extra mile, a whole lot of things, but hard work and long hours, right? No substitute there. People are always looking for shortcuts, guys. There's not a shortcut. Okay, you got to put in your time, pay your dues. 5th was focus. Focus your energies on truly mastering one skill or subject, right? And then 6th, this is kind of a reoccurring theme, is failure. Any leader has failed at something. Anybody successful in business, in the entrepreneurial realm, has failed or many things. They learn from their experience and they're motivated to prove that failure was an aberration, right? It's part of the journey of success, as we know, but from a leadership standpoint, failure teaches humility and exponentially enhances the desire to succeed the next time, right? Failure can be a driver if you if you have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Failure can be a motivation, but I find that interesting. If you're successful, you're not immune from failure. We have to understand that. Number 7, he brings up is persistence. Almost by definition, it's a leader is doing something new, different, unique, etc., and will therefore encounter resistance from those who like or respect the status quo, right? If you're going against the grain, you're going to get slivers, you're going to get detractors, and that just kind of, it goes with the territory. But with leadership, you got to be persistent, right? You're going to rubbing against the grain. And I've seen that over our last year and a half to get where we're at, is it being persistent. That's a character of leadership and an entrepreneur too. 8th is persuasiveness, right? Leaders have to be persuasive. He said it's impossible to lead if no one's following, right? John Maxwell said with humor that, if you think you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're just taking a long walk, right? So a leader can persuade others to follow through one of 3 basic means of communication. These are interesting. Writing something that inspires readers. Okay, 2, saying something that motivates listeners. Or 3, doing something that sets an example for others to follow. So leaders motivate and they persuade in one of those 3 ways. That was really interesting. 9th is a humble demeanor, guys. I can't underestimate this at all. Some leaders allow their position of authority to develop into an arrogant demeanor, and that's really sad. Unfortunately, we see that too often. But other leaders recognize that they're not omnipotent, right? We're human. We're not all knowing, and that luck has helped them, right? We're back to number 1. And the result is a more humble demeanor. The latter is more effective, he said, in earning respect from followers. And I got to say that, amen, and I agree with that 100%. Right? People that are arrogant think they got it all figured out. They're all that in a bag of chips. I'm not impressed by, but having a humble demeanor. Number 10, interestingly, says it's credit sharing, right? The most effective leaders inevitably realize that they can accomplish a great deal more if they're willing to share the credit with others. Right? Ronald Reagan said the same. There's no limit to what humans can accomplish if they are willing to share the credit, right? Don't be, I guess, call it a ball hog or a credit hog. Recognize people for their efforts, and as part of the team, don't try to take it all on your own and be a glory hound, I guess. Number 11, the ability to keep learning. And this is huge, guys, because personal development is key to anybody that's successful, but as a successful leader, as he notes, and successful in the entrepreneurial realm, you have to think differently, but you have to learn, you have to develop personally. He said leaders need to expand their knowledge every day to exercise the most unique muscle, their brain. And interestingly, here's what he does. This was kind of interesting. He said, I've tried to continue to learn by somewhat obsessive reading 6 newspapers a day. Okay, at least a dozen weekly periodicals, and at least 1 book a week. I can't read most that quickly, but 1 book a week, that's a great goal. That's 4 a month, right? 48 a year. Although often trying to juggle 3 to 4 books simultaneously, I can relate to that because I usually read 3 to 4 at a time, not all at the same time, of course, but they're in my stack. Nothing focuses the mind like a well-written book. There's something to be said about reading, guys. Leaders are readers. And I'll say they're not YouTube watchers. They're not video watchers. They're not talk show listeners. That you can certainly learn and get input from that. But I think what reading does, it helps, as he said, focus the mind. But you have to ponder, think about, and even reread what was read. And that allows you to really grow. So I think that one really stood out to me. Number 12 is integrity. Huge, guys. Leaders vary in their commitment to integrity and ethical behavior. Sadly, but that is true. But the most effective leaders, he said, are seen as committed to highly ethical behavior. And that commitment enhances their leadership capabilities, right? People want to follow somebody they know, like, and trust, right? Trust is huge. Integrity is huge. It's one of my core values: authenticity, integrity, and leadership. You have to have integrity as a leader. So he says, do not cut ethical corners and you will be much more effective as a leader. Isn't that awesome? Then responding to crisis, the last one. Leaders are most needed when crises occur. Obviously, this book was just finished in June of this year, 2020. So, the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen people step up into leadership roles publicly, et cetera. But, rising to the occasion when an existential crisis occurs can mark a leader forever. Like, Abe Lincoln or Churchill rallying his country to fight during World War II. So, guys, those are some of the highlights. I really want to commend this book. If you like leadership, the topic of it, written by a guy who is clearly a leader out there. Again, not necessarily a household name, but he interviewed 30 people like Oprah, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, just to name a few. So his insights from those interviews should be make for really great reading. I'd love to get your feedback on this. Maybe if you picked up the book or as you read through it, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. As always, please feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to get reoccurring videos. I do a Monday morning leadership every Monday, and also connect with me, please, on social media. I'd love to have a conversation with you there. Thanks so much for joining me, guys, and have an awesome Monday. Bye-bye.